everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I did my responsible civic duty this morning, went out and voted early. Is it because I thought it was super important to do it? Or was it more because it was like, well, maybe they'll update their robocall list and then I'll stop getting annoying texts and calls like, Tony, maybe a little from column A and a little from column B. Tony, have you done your civic duty yet, or are you an unpatriotic American?
No, not yet, but yes, no, that will be done. It's kind of like I was doing some research online for a blend jet, which is like a handheld blender, right? So I bought one for my wife, and it's like I just continue to get ads for them. It's like I've already bought it. I wish there was a way to opt out of ads when you're like, no, I've already purchased this. I know what it is. I don't need to see any more ads for it. Send me something different. But such is the internet, such are robocalls, such is October and November. But
yes, it's not, and far be it from us to complain about internet advertising, which pays, fine, it's good. It's good when we're getting paid for it. It's like sponsorship money. Like, it's good when we're getting paid for it. It's bad when we're not getting paid for it and there's stuff on the field at Ohio Stadium. So it's just kind of, in conclusion, America is a land of contrasts.
yeah, and Tom, let's pause right now for a message from one of our sponsors. Thank you, Body Groomer. Great job on that. Anyway, I couldn't think of the right name, but it worked anyway. It made Tom laugh. So, Tom, this is a Wednesday show. We talk about a bunch of different things on Wednesdays. Don't always go diving deep into the weekend's matchup, but this is a very big matchup, so there's plenty to dive into. But first, would you please update everybody on the injury situation at Ohio State based on what Ryan Day had to say on Tuesday? Please give the people all of the knowledge.
Tony, we're going to find out later this week. Back to you.
I was expecting more, Tom. Not from Ryan Day. I was expecting more from you. Just give us something. No, but yes, Ryan Day said that he'll talk about it on Thursday. Didn't want to do it today or yesterday on Tuesday, and it was an interesting situation there at interviews, negotiating how to ask questions that won't be answered, and it was put out there like talking to Jerry Emig, the SID, like if Ryan Day would just come out and at the start just say, give us an update on the injuries, we wouldn't have to ask about it. And no, Ryan Day doesn't want to talk about injuries, but if you just say like, well, day to day, we're hoping to have them back, that saves us from having to ask about it, especially now that we've had a one question rule implemented at Ohio State, to where there's so much media there, and people are asking two questions and some people aren't getting any questions. If you just tell us that part, we wouldn't have to ask about it. But so it did get asked about once and then said, yeah, no, not going to tell you anything. Maybe we'll know more Thursday. Did he say we'll know more, or he'll know more, or just Ohio State will know more and nobody else will know more?
Well, I was sort of listening to the answer. I have not gone back and reread the transcript of it, but my sense was they'll be able to talk about it more. The reasoning given was that they, had really not been on the practice field all that much. Some of these guys are sort of working their way back, and they practice Monday, and okay, now you got to see how things are going on Tuesday. Once we're through Tuesday, then we'll know more. And conveniently, that's after we talk to him. So that's these are the games that get played, and I think for people who are concerned, I would expect to see Jaxon Smith-Njigba play. I would expect to see Mayan Williams play. I would expect, I think the guys who we have not gotten any indication that there has been a major, backward step for any of the guys who we've been telling you can sort of anticipate you should play for Iowa. So you should probably be able to expect those guys to play. But Tony, this is why people have to stay tuned for the rest of the podcast this week. This is why you have to subscribe to all of our podcasts, because it's like, we're not stretching this out like some telenovela thing where we're going to stretch this into 17 episodes. Like, tune in next week to find out, will Little Orphan Annie survive? Will Jaxon Smith-Njigba be back? And what is Little Orphan Annie's secret message? And as long as Jaxon Smith-Njigba drinks his Ovaltine, he should be back for this weekend. That's my big takeaway.
Sounds like you're saying Ryan Day was raised on summer episodes of The Guiding Light and Days of Our Lives, like all of us, and just appreciates that kind of drama. But also getting to watch when we go to interviews Wednesday night, we'll see who is coming off the practice field. Although, Tom, do you think they're practicing inside? Because it's a little chilly. And so we may not be allowed in there on the indoor for a while, but there's still going to be a bunch of eyes peeled to see, Jaxon Smith-Njigba had his helmet, or, Mayan Williams wasn't in a boot. Travion Henderson wasn't in a boot. We saw all of these guys. So there's going to be a bunch of eyes looking for as much information on the injuries as you can find after practice. And then, of course, we will talk about what we saw in tomorrow morning, Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning podcast, which will be released shortly after the interviews tonight.
Well, that's all great information, except Mark Givler's the guest on Thursday's Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning podcast. So we may just do some kind of a live something. We're all, we didn't give you as much content as we typically like to give you last week. So we may just do a live something tonight. We'll figure it out. Idea. It's, Buckeye Weekly, where planning happens very frequently more than 3 minutes before we hit record. All of these words are true. That's actually our motto. The whole thing ending with all of these words are true. So we need to update the graphic on the podcast apps.
And when you say the motto, you must put your hand over your heart and your other hand on your hip, and then you pour a little out at the top.
And we also need to figure out how to write that in Latin to make it look fancy on the logo. Mm-hmm.
E pluribus nunum. Anyway, from 1 noon.
I think we're done here. I don't think we're going to top that. I had a bunch of mean things to say about Brian Ferentz. No, that's it.
All right. Well, yeah, let's before we get to that, and that we probably should just go 40 minutes on that, but we've got an entire week of, or 3 or 4 days left. And then whatever happens after that, and then also next week, and then a week after that to discuss Brian Ferentz more. Let's talk about the good side of the Iowa football, which is their defense. And the biggest thing I took away from Ryan Day on Tuesday and from Kevin Wilson is that they have the utmost respect for this Iowa defense. And not because it does all of these, crazy bells and whistles, and they do this, and they blitz this, and they run this, and then at times they'll do this. It's because they do the same thing almost all the time, and they know what they do well. They've been doing it for 23 years now, basically. And the thing that struck me, what Ryan Day said, is that they have faced every kind of offense. So they know how they're going to be attacked by every kind of offense, which means they also know how Ohio State is going to attack them. Even though they haven't played Ohio State since 2017, and it's a very different offense now, they've played teams similar to Ohio State in terms of passing and the attack. Now, those teams are Big Ten teams, which Ohio State really isn't, if we're being honest. But they know what to expect from what Ohio State is going to try to do. I think the difference there is that Ohio State will be able to execute at a higher rate than most teams they run into. But still, they haven't played for forever almost. But there's a familiarity because Iowa's defense has not changed, and they've seen every kind of offense under the sun.
Yeah, Iowa's defense is a little like a restaurant where it's like, this is, a great pizza place, and they do pizza so well. Do they have spaghetti? No. Do they sell wings? No. They have the thing that they do, and they do it really well. It's almost like the defensive equivalent of like Wisconsin's offense. Like Wisconsin's offense does the thing, and they have the thing that they do, and they do it consistently well. And they have not, you're not going to wake up tomorrow and suddenly they're an air raid team now. Like, no, they are going to do the thing that they do, and they have done it pretty consistently, and they recruit to it, and they know it, and they execute, and they're just going to out execute the majority of the teams on their schedule. And that's how they win. And that's kind of what Iowa is on defense, where it's not a bunch of super fancy disguised coverages. I'm going to try and have Ross Fulton on the morning show later this week to talk about this a little bit more, because this is one of the things that's like really fascinating, because it's like, are they confusing? Not really, because you kind of know what they're going to do, and they're going to put little tweaks on it. It's like, now the pepperoni now the pizza has pineapple on it. Like, okay, it's still pizza. It's a little different, but it's still pizza. And they do kind of do the same basic thing. They don't have a bunch of 5-star players all around the field. They have the thing that they do, and they do it really well. And when the Ohio State coaches were talking about them, it was just, it's just like eye discipline in the secondary. The corners, you're not going to catch their corners peeking into the backfield and be able to run past them. They're going to do exactly what they're supposed to do. Talk about hand placement and pad level and all the stuff college football coaches love to talk about, that people are like, does it really matter that much? And it's like, well, Iowa has the third ranked defense in scoring defense this year. So yeah, apparently it does matter, and apparently they're pretty good at it.
Iowa's defense, there is not a lot to write home about, but whatever they do, it's done well. It's, as you were talking, I was thinking it kind of reminds me of the movie The Social Network, and you're like, oh, it's a really good movie. What's it about? Well, it's about the founding of Facebook, and it's like, that sounds like a terrible movie. It's like, no. I know it doesn't sound any good, but it's really intriguing. It's a really good movie. There's a lot of drama, and it's like, really, a movie about Facebook? Yeah, no, thanks, I'll pass. And this is a defense that doesn't sound exciting. It's it's the defense that your uncle and your grandpa like, and then they send emails about it to their friends. But
forward, Iowa defense.
Exactly, and that's Iowa, and yet here they are. And I was just on the Mark Rogers show earlier today, and we had on an Iowa writer from 24/7, and he was talking about over the last, 42 games or something, 30 some, like the record that Iowa has is really good when they score 21 points or more. And that's offensively, defensively. They've lost like 3 or 4 games in the last however many years that has taken. I don't know if that's 15 years.
They're 6-3 over that 4-year span when they score 21 points or more.
But it's like 29-3 or something in their last 32 games of scoring 21 points. And I'm like, my question was, what do you think if they know that? Then, as we'll just move into the Iowa offense bash session that we can get into right now if you want. But if you know your record is that good, scoring 21 points, why not try to score 21 points every game? And then what happens, Tom, if you try to score 24 points? And then, Tom, what happens if you try to score 30 points? What if you do that? Wouldn't that make your defense, your overall record, even better? And you know what? If it puts your defense at a disadvantage, it might be a disadvantage for one possession. And your defense is good enough to contain for that one possession. They're so terrified about putting this defense in bad spots, yet it's a defense that can handle being put in bad spots,
Yeah, well, here's what would happen if you acknowledge that you were trying to score 30 points a game. Well, then your son would be held accountable for stuff, and then he would be fired, and then you wouldn't get to work with your son anymore. So there's the problem there. The way people talk about, like, the polite way that people talk about the Iowa offense is they talk about it as complementary football. It's like, well, they know they don't have to score so many points, so therefore they don't score too many points, and they just try to punt the ball away and play field position and lean on their defense. And it's like, early years Jim Tressel, when Ohio State was just trying to win every game like 14-9, it seemed like. And I think football has moved beyond that. You look at the scoring that's happening across the nation right now, and it is a much higher level than it was in 2002. Football has changed. You don't have to play Luddite 2002 football anymore. And no one is really succeeding playing Luddite 2002 football anymore. Nick Saban was doing that for a while and then recognized, the spread thing happened and the hurry up thing happened. And he looked around and said, well, are we sure that this is what we want football to be? And everyone kind of went, yeah, this is what we want football to be. And he went, okay. And now they're, now Alabama's playing 52-49 games sometimes. So Kirk Ferentz has just chosen not to adapt. He's just, I am kind of curious. I want to see. I'm going to guess, since he's running like an Amish offense, I'm guessing Kirk Ferentz has no buttons on any of his Iowa game day attire. So we'll see. We'll check that on Saturday. But they just choose not to do anything interesting. They choose not to, it's just, we're just going to lean on the defense. And then, and then your defense is good enough that you can win games. But you could have a good defense and a good offense too. That's actually a choice you can make, is have a good defense and a good offense and do some new interesting stuff. Is no, I think I'd rather not. I think I'd rather just be 120 something in rushing and passing and scoring and just try and win every game 10-7. And Tony, you win some, you lose some.
You sure do. One of the upsides for Kirk Ferentz and the Amish offense, no film to watch.
Yes, they what are they would they paint it like oil paintings of tight ends? Like that's just they just go in and look at the oil paintings of tight ends.
Long beards on Luke Lachey.
Yes, barn raisings on Tuesdays. Yeah.
But just obviously for our Amish audience, we're just joking. You mentioned going back to a 2002 offense for Iowa. That would be outstanding. But Brad Banks is not coming through that door. And there's no Drew Tate coming in 2005 either. There's not even a CJ Beathard or Ricky Stanzi. Like, they've had guys throughout the years, and they thought that Spencer Petras would be one, or maybe they thought they hoped. You figure like, well, he's been here forever. Eventually he's going to be good. But they've had nobody else that they could turn to. And when they've tried to turn to somebody else, it hasn't worked. And this isn't working. And when Kirk Ferentz is, I should just read you some of these quotes, Tom, because he's been asked the past couple of weeks about, have you thought about getting rid of somebody? Have you thought about maybe making a change at the midseason with the offensive staff, which has been, very underwhelming? And one time he answered the question, it was, yeah, if you thought it was going to serve an end, yeah, absolutely. So basically he's like, well, if it would do something good, I would. If it would be better than what I already have, I sure would make a move. And it's like, you don't think you can do any better than what you're doing right now. You don't think a change, the whole change for change's sake, that may or may not work, but this isn't working. And to say like, well, we could try to do something, but that's not going to be any better, is not exactly the kind of encouraging words a head coach would give you when there are some struggles that they have to kind of talk their way out of.
I think the tricky thing for Kirk Ferentz, and you have to assume with a head football coach, he has a better grasp on the situation as the head football coach than you do as an outsider. So you have to sort of be respectful of the fact that, look, yes, he does have two other sons. However, he knows them better than you do, Tony, and he may have a great sense that Brian is in fact the best option to lead this Iowa offense of those three choices. And if you have another suggestion, Tony, I would love to hear it, frankly, because Tony, as you may or may not be aware, Tony, they won 10 games last year. Not sure if you remember that.
No, you're right. I just wonder, no nephews, any cousins, anything like that? Common law spouses, that sort of thing, where it doesn't even have to be blood, doesn't even have to be like legal marriage. Just anybody else that you can reach out to, neighborhood watch, anybody in your neighborhood watch that could do this. But yes, that was another answer for everybody out there when asked, hey, have you, I know you said last week you hadn't thought about making any changes. Have you thought about it now? And that's when one of his responses was, no, we won 10 games here last year. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, being very condescending about his offense and team, when right now this is not the time to be condescending like that, especially Tom. How many points has last year's team, those 10 wins, how many points has that accounted for this year? Let me get my math if you want to go ahead and tell me that.
The answer is 0. However, that's not that many fewer than this year's team has actually scored this year. So
fair.
Yeah, I started writing something and it was just like, this is probably too mean to publish. So I'll just read some of the notes here. I went through and, Iowa's offenses through 6 games. Ohio State has scored 41 touchdowns on offense. 41. Through 6 games, Iowa has scored 7 touchdowns on offense. So in honor of the 35 points that they've scored on offense, I put together 35 extremely true facts about the Iowa offense as compared to the Ohio State offense. The last time Iowa played Ohio State was Brian Ferentz' first season as offensive coordinator, 55-24, right? 54 game. Nate Stanley threw for 5 touchdowns that day for Iowa in the last 4 seasons since the Indiana game in 2018, which is like the early part of October. So the last 4 years, 365-day spans, no Hawkeye quarterback has thrown for more than 3 touchdowns in a game. Kirk, CJ Stroud is doing double that like virtually every week. So since October 1st, 2019, Hawkeye quarterbacks have twice as many games with 3+ interceptions, 4 of those, as they have with 3+ touchdowns, 2 of those. Iowa has held opponents to 10 points or less in 5 of 6 games this season, and the record is 3-3. Iowa has lost twice this season in games where they have allowed 10 points or less. Tony, how many times in the last 30 years has Ohio State lost a game in which they allowed 10 points or less?
I don't offhand. I don't recall any.
They lost 10-7 to Michigan in 2011, and that was that game where like Ohio State scored
Michigan
a touchdown
State.
or Michigan State. Yes, they scored a touchdown on that last play of the game to make it 10-7. Yes, that's the only time. Before that, they lost to Illinois. I think it was 10-7 in 1991, and then they lost to maybe Wisconsin, and it was 9-0 or something in like 1982. So in the last 40 years, Ohio State's done it twice. In the first 6 weeks this year, Iowa's done it twice. Iowa currently ranks 120th in the nation. Ohio State averages more passing yards in a half than Iowa does in a game. Iowa's rushing attack, unfortunately, not quite as dynamic as their passing attack, 127th in the nation. Ohio State averages as many yards rushing in 22 minutes of game action as Iowa does in a full game. Iowa is the only team in the nation to rank 120th or worse in both passing and rushing this year. They're way better in explosive passing plays, 36 passing plays of 10+ yards this season. That's 118th in the country. So moving on up, Ohio State one play short of doubling that. They have 71. Iowa to 36. Iowa's one of 14 teams without a passing play of 50+ yards this season. Ohio State has 4. Iowa is tied with Temple for the fewest rushing plays of 10+ yards this season with just 12. Ohio State has as many 20 yards runs as Iowa does 10-yard runs. Iowa all the way up. We are skyrocketing up these boards now, Tony. 115th in the nation with 4 rushing plays of 20 yards this season. Ohio State has as many 40-yard rushes this season as Iowa does 20-yard rushes. Iowa averages 2.62 yards per rush, 128th in the nation. Tony, if Kirk Ferentz's dad believed him enough to go for it on 4th down, 2.62 yards would get you a first down. However, Kirk Ferentz does not believe in his son because Iowa ranks 131st in the nation, dead last, just 3 4th down attempts all year. Brian Ferentz, however, has proven his father's utter lack of belief correct. He's converted 0 of these 3 attempts, the only FBS team without a 4th down conversion this season. I mean, like I said, the man knows his son understands the situation. 4th down, not the only time Iowa struggles. Hawkeyes have converted only 24 third downs all season. They've converted an average of 4 third downs per game, 125th in the country. You got to be fair, though. Their plotting pace means they have had fewer third down attempts than many teams. So you got to look at it a little bit more advanced and at a percentage basis. They're converting 29.6% of their third downs. That moves them all the way up from 125th in the country to 124th in the country. So, Tony, I think you owe Brian Ferentz an apology. Iowa has scored 9 touchdowns this season. 2 of those were scored by the defense. So 7 offensive touchdowns ties them with Colorado State and UMass for the worst in the nation. Ohio State scored 7 offensive touchdowns in the first half of its game against Michigan State last year. Iowa has scored 7 offensive touchdowns in 6 games. Hawkeyes have thrown 2 touchdowns this season, tied for 129th in the nation. Tony, we're not even halfway through this list. I cannot tell you how many bad Iowa football stats there are. CJ Stroud threw for more touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, in a 6-minute and 15-second span during the second quarter of the 2022 Rose Bowl. More touchdowns in the 6-minute and 15-second span than Iowa has thrown in 6 games this season. CJ Stroud threw for more touchdowns in both the first quarter and the second quarter against Michigan State in 2021 than Iowa has thrown for in half of the regular season this year. Iowa's 127th in the nation in rushing yards, 493. And they are 127th in rushing yards per game, just in case. Again, we want to make sure we're not skewing things because fewer games. Yes, 127th, no matter how you count it. Now, in fairness, they may not be good at scoring touchdowns, but they're also not good at getting first downs. They are 131st, dead last in the nation, 13.3 first downs per game. They are 123rd in rushing first downs via pass, 99th in 127th in first downs gained by rush, 123rd in first downs gained by pass. However, Tony, 99th in first downs gained via penalty. So as long as the other team hands them a first down, that really improves their chances of getting a first down. They are all the way up to 106th in the nation in sacks allowed. However, Tony, they have really, really helped out the punting unit. So here, let's end on something positive here. I still have like 10 more, but I'm gonna stop and at least let you talk for a little while. Iowa is in top 10 in the nation in most punts, 9th there, punting yards, 2nd there, punts per game, 3rd there, and punting yards per game. Tony, 1st in the nation, Iowa Hawkeyes football. That's where you hang your hat.
Well, I think that's impressive, yes, but really, and they do have an Australian punter, I believe, they could be doing that with an American as well. And so that doesn't really say much to me. They could have some random American punter, some Joe Blow off the streets of, I don't know any cities in America right now off the top of my head, but it could be anybody. And they're still going to be leading the nation in punting yards. So you lost me at that one.
You could be an American from any American city, Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, any American city that produces punters. Tony, okay, let's talk about last year. Kirk Ferentz, we talked about, Kirk Ferentz saying we won 10 games last year. I don't know if you're aware of that, and defending Brian. Well, listen, he's not having a good year this year. Tony, last year, Iowa ranked 99th in the nation in scoring offense, 102nd in the nation in rushing offense, 109th in passing offense. They lost 4 games. They scored 7, 3, and 17 points in their 4 losses. And we talked about this before we hit record. Otherwise, this would have been a great one for me to throw at you and try and stump you. They scored more than 2 touchdowns on offense against a Power 5 opponent one time in that 10-4 season. 14 games, they scored more than 2 touchdowns on offense once. They are Iowa's defense is 3rd in the country, 9.8 yards per game. They have lost 3 games. The only other team in the top 15 in points allowed per game with 3 or more losses, Tony, do you know who it is?
No, give me it.
Iowa State. Is it time to kick Iowa out of the United States and go to 49 stars? 49 stars in the flag. Tony, I say maybe. I think it's maybe time to have that conversation. Iowa's defense has finished the season ranked in the top 15 in points allowed in each season since 2018. Every season they've been in the top 15 in points allowed. Never been a better bowl than the Citrus Bowl over that time. The last time they scored 28 points in a game, Tony, Black Friday last year against Nebraska, but that took a blocked punt for a touchdown and also a safety. Brian Ferentz's offense scored 1 touchdown that day. They scored 33 points the week before that, but it took a kickoff return for a touchdown and also a pick 6 to get to 33 points. The offense once again managed exactly 1 touchdown. The last time Iowa's offense scored 4 touchdowns in one game, October 1st, 2021 against Maryland. Ohio State's offense scored 4 touchdowns in the span of 11 minutes and 1 second in the first quarter against Toledo this season. Then they scored 4 entirely different touchdowns in the span of 12 minutes and 58 seconds between the end of the third and the start of the fourth quarter of that same game. They scored 4 offensive touchdowns in less than a quarter against Wisconsin in the span of 13 minutes and 40 seconds. And Tony, in 5 tries, a Brian Ferentz offense has never scored 4 touchdowns against Wisconsin. Tony, I'm out of Brian Ferentz facts, and I never want to watch football again.
That's only going to be soccer for you from now on. Need some high scoring sport in your blood. And that Maryland game, I think the Terps had something like 6 or 7 turnovers. So how many of those 4 touchdowns were a short field? I'm guessing 8 of those 4 touchdowns were based on a short field for Iowa. And I've done some tweeting about Iowa this year, just as you have. Like, there are so many just ridiculous stats, like the fact that Spencer Petras has thrown one more pass than CJ Stroud this year. Like, Spencer Petras has 161 pass attempts. CJ Stroud has 160. And CJ Stroud has 797 more yards passing in that one fewer attempt. So what's the math on that one, Tom? If you give Spencer Petras would have to probably throw like an 800-yard pass to get to the same average per attempt as CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud has 24 touchdowns to Petras's 2, but they both do have 3 interceptions, Tom.
I think the way to make the math easier there is for CJ Stroud to throw a negative 800-yard pass on his next attempt, and then that will kind of make the math work out much, much cleaner and easier than trying to do it with different denominators.
Yes, and Marvin Harrison has scored as many touchdowns as Iowa has this year, although he has scored 2 more offensive touchdowns than Iowa. Mayan Williams has scored 1 more offensive touchdown than Iowa, and Emeka Egbuka has scored the same number of offensive touchdowns as Iowa this year. But, Tom, as I tweeted a week or two ago, Iowa has 7 field goals. Marvin Harrison, boom, 0. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think you've got to be a complete player, and Marvin Harrison just is not. I mean, yeah, facts are facts, Tony, right? Am I wrong? Am I wrong anywhere there? Like, there are 3 phases of the game. Marvin Harrison only exceeds at 1. So,
people talk about Marvin Harrison's hands. You never hear him talking about his feet and his kicking leg. So,
well, not in the kicking context. In other, getting feet down in bounds, yes, but yes.
But until he changes that, is he a first rounder? I don't know. Could he help himself? Of course. But anything, I'm almost afraid to ask Tom. Anything else? Because we're going to be talking about Iowa for the foreseeable future. Because I'm only allowing myself to see a few days in advance. But anything else?
We have to do a bold prediction show tomorrow, and we were already talking like this is the most impossible bold prediction show because it's like Iowa will get 2 yards of total offense in the whole game, and it's like, is that bold? Is that really? I mean, what constitutes bold with the Iowa offense? This is going to be either our most or least contentious bold prediction show ever because either we're going to be, it's impossible to make a bold prediction. So either we're going to be fighting each other on everything, or we're just going to be so disgusted with it that we just want to get done and never think of it again.
Well, and there's one that I was looking at, and we can just throw it out here now. Like I was looking at, I think it was 30-yard receptions for Ohio State. Because at this point, I don't think Iowa has given up a single pass of 30 yards or more. Maybe it's rush of 30 yards or more. And whatever it was, I was going to say, well, Ohio State, now they've given up 3. Well, whatever it was, like Ohio State will get 2 of those because Iowa has only given up 3 all season. So it's like, that's significant. Iowa's given up a half of these carries per game. Ohio State will, 4 times that, except for the fact that Ohio State averages like 3 of those a game, or 6 of those a game. And it's like, you can't marry these 2 things. And so, the amount of bickering that is going to, I don't know that I have the energy, but again, this is the bold prediction show leading into a road trip. So can we afford to be passive? I don't think so.
Can we afford to be passive? No. Can we afford to be aggressive? No. Can we afford to be passive aggressive? Yes, absolutely. You have that to look forward to tomorrow. I can't wait.
All right, so that will do it for today. Thank you all for joining us. As always, you can find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Think about becoming a member and then follow through. See what you think about it. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle as well. And of course, check out Tom every day on the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning podcast. That will do it for today. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.